Good afternoon on a very cold, wet, windy and thoroughly miserable afternoon in springtime Sweden. It's springtime in Sweden. You wouldn't believe it to look out the window. Anyway, just today's blog. I saw a Cullen Roche post earlier talking about the imminent replacement or otherwise of the US dollar as the world reserve currency, and I've also seen another post from Blair Fix, who is talking about how the fall away of share of energy being used in the United States is a metric for the fall of the American empire, as it were. And these are both related to, by my lights, the financial system and some common confusions, confusing the financial system for the economy itself. The financial system isn't the economy. In fact, it's a poor readout of what the economy actually is. And by becoming the object of its own study, it's neglecting the progenitor of itself, as it were. I mean, the economy itself. Without an economy, there's no point having a financial system. Without a financial system, perhaps we wouldn't have such a big economy, but the economy itself is real, whereas the financial system and financial instruments within it aren't real. They are abstract measures, abstract measurements of something we call the economy, and the economy is made up of real things, real actors, i.e. individuals, firms of individuals together interacting with each other, trading real stuff, the necessaries of life. Now, so that's really the basic background behind this blog, which I have worked really quite hard on, and what it amounts to is a series of quotes which are sourced in here that thread together to make a argument or abstract, if you like, regarding what political economy is all about. And so without further ado, I'm just going to read the blog until I feel I've made the point. So the title of the blog is "Do Not Have Two Differing Weights in Your Bag, One Heavy, One Light," and that's the beginning of Deuteronomy 25:13 to 16. And then I've taken a title from David Knight's show a couple of weeks ago, Power, Economic and Geopolitical, Comes Out of the Barrel of Oil, and then my poem Tides of the Petrodollar Moon, which I'm going to read now. Just before doing that, this is part of a film of Jesus throwing the money changers out of the temple. It's an important point to say that he's moving the money changers, not the money lenders, out of the temple. Usury is not just charging interest on money, it's actually not exchanging value for value on a like-for-like basis, and that's what the quote from Deuteronomy is about. But the money changers, effectively, to make offerings at the temple, you had to make those offerings in the Tyrian shekel, which was the Roman currency, which was imposed on the local population of Jerusalem by King Herod, and King Herod was a vassal king, the vassal of the Roman, conquering Roman Empire, as it were. And the money changers were not giving fair value for people who were buying their offerings at the temple, and you had to give the offerings, and you weren't getting fair value for your for your local currency with the only currency that was acceptable to the priests in charge of the commerce of the temple, and this is Jesus's falling out with the Jewish priest class, the ruling class, who are in cahoots with the vassal Romans, and so but it's the money changes, the rate of exchange, the idea of people going on a pilgrimage to give offerings at the temple and not getting fair value for their local money. That's very important as an analogy to the petrodollar, or the reserve currency, and floating exchange rates, etc. That's kind of an institutionalization of this usury and not offering fair value, which is prohibited in the Bible, in Deuteronomy. So if you're not religious, don't worry about that. Just think of it in terms of ethical dealing, you know, a humanist ethics of you know, what is fair. So anyway, this Tides of the Dollar Moon is a poem I wrote in 2016. I'm just going to read that now and then move on to this series of quotes. A planet to its star must look. The planet no less needs its moon. As the sun is the store of energy new, the moon drives and regulates currents of the tides, time, and the nature of things. That golden orb gives all, that silvery moon regulates all. Both work together, even as the other seemingly sleeps, and yet currents of the tides, time, and the nature of things pass. On the nature of man-made things, on a standard of gold which Jennings would not be crucified upon, that cross of gold alone, hard food of Midas, no tides to complement the orb, for silver was its currency. The silvery moon to that cross's golden sun, which means of exchange fed the common man. The silver moon drives and regulates currencies of the tides, time, and the nature of things. Time passed, and man forsakes the golden orb and its silvery moon. No credit he gave to drivers of tides, time, and the nature of things. Fiat of imperial rule enforces debts, new tides in political economy. Fiat dictates the new tides of commerce, ephors of debt above and astride the law. No silvery moon complementary to the golden orb. There are no tides by means of which the common man may be fed. Hard food of Midas alone, starvation. King Canute-like, those ephors wave bidding the advancing tide backwards. Still they advance tides in a tsunami of debt, tides of a dollar moon by fiat, hegemonic tides of the dollar moon. So I wrote that in 2016. So here is a abstract of political economy and the financialized aspects of that. Talk about centralization, the credit system, which has its focus in the so-called national banks and the big money lenders and usurers surrounding them, constitutes enormous centralization and gives this class of parasites the fabulous power not only to periodically despoil industrial capitalists, but also to interfere in actual production in a most dangerous manner. And this gang knows nothing about production and has nothing to do with it. There is a certain proportionate quantity of money requisite to carry on the trade of a country freely and currently, more than which would be of no advantage in trade, unless, if much less, exceedingly detrimental to it. This leads us to the following general considerations. Money and goods are different. Most confusion in economic thinking arises from a failure to recognise this fact. Goods are wealth, which you have, while money is a claim on wealth, which you do not have. Thus goods are an asset, money is a debt. If goods are wealth, money is not wealth, or negative wealth, or even anti-wealth. They always behave in opposite ways, just as they usually move in opposite directions. If the value of one goes up, the value of the other goes down, and in the same proportion. A powerful apparatus. The powerful apparatus equals transferring from one state pocket into another such remarkable real values as Soviet rubles, current accounts expressed in gold rubles, and even that falsely, not at the real parity, 2.8 to 7.9 to 10.3 million rubles on December the 16th, January 16th and February the 1st. Ha ha! And how are they made up? 90 to 98% are revenues from our state trusts, i.e. the same official bits of paper from the same bureaucrats. At present, the state bank equals a bureaucratic paper game. There is the truth for you, if you want to hear not the sweet communist official lies, with which everyone feeds you as a high mandarin, but the truth. Discussions of value, of fluctuating prices, of the gold standard, of changing interest rates, of items of pecuniary wealth, which are at the same time items of debt, are merely discussions looking toward a readjustment of the factors which prevent them. The problem of analysing political choices against the metric of a monetary measure is the money as a thing is most certainly a variable, and like any good technologist, scientist or metrologist will tell you, a unit of measurement has to be clearly defined and fixed. The dollar, he notes, that it is a variable. Why anyone should attempt on this earth to use a variable as a measuring rod is so utterly absurd that he dismisses any serious consideration of its use in his study of what should be done. He also considers price and value and the fine-spun theories of philosophers and economists who have attempted to surround these terms with the semblance of meaning. These terms, like the monetary unit, may have had meaning to men in the past, but they mean nothing whatsoever to the modern technologist. The standard of measurement is not relevant to the things measured, and the measuring rod and the things measured as if they were stable are all variables. The monetary and financial system of an economy are part of the socio-politico-economic control mechanism used by every state to connect the economy with the polity and society. This neural network provides the administrative means to collect taxes, direct investment, provide public goods, trade. The money measures provide a crude but serviceable basis for the accounting system, which in turn, along with the codification of commercial law and financial regulation, are the basis for economic evaluation and the measurement of trust and fiduciary responsibility among the economic agents. A central feature of a control mechanism is that it is designed to influence process. Dynamics is its natural domain. Equilibrium is not the prime concern. The ability to control the direction of motion is what counts. Money and financial institutions provide the command and control system of a modern society. The study of the mechanism, how they are formed, how they are controlled and manipulated, and how their influence is measured in terms of social, political and economic purpose, pose questions not in pure economics, not even in a narrow political economy, but in the broad compass of a political economy set in the context of society. Do not have two differing weights in your bag, one heavy, one light. Do not have two differing measures in your house, one large, one small. You must have accurate and honest weights and measures, so that you may live long in the land of the Lord your God is giving you. For the Lord your God detests anyone who does those things, anyone who deals dishonestly. This command was given in a context where coins were not available for trade. Payments for purchases and sales were made by weighing out gold or silver. A clever way to defraud people was to use scales that weighed light when making payments and a different set of scales that weighed heavy when getting paid. The command applies to everyone who is selling goods or services. They must represent the stuff that they are selling. Selling flawed goods as if they are good quality is wrong, because God detests anyone who deals dishonestly. There should be no rip-offs among God's people. They should be known as honest traders. We're not entitled to take whatever price we can get, even if it is greater than we think that the goods are worth. Nor are we entitled to pay the lowest price possible, if less than we think the good is worth. We cannot buy goods from China and just ignore the fact that the people who made them were paid a pittance. Two comments are common in business: let the buyer beware what the market will bear. They have no place amongst God's people. This command has a broader application. It means that bank policies that inflate the currency are immoral. In biblical times, kings devalued their coins by mixing silver into gold coins and other cheaper metals into silver coins. The coin appears to have the same value, so people still use it, but the king has stolen some of their gold or silver. This is immoral. In modern times, currencies are deflated by central bank policy, but the consequences are the same. People holding the currency are robbed of some of their wealth. Inflation is always immoral, regardless of means used. The person with the scales has the power. Most people dealing with them would have to trust their honesty, because they would not be able to afford their own scales. God gets really upset when people with power use it dishonestly. Kings and central banks have power. God detests counterfeiting coins, and he detests central bank money creation, because they are the same economic transaction in a different form. In 1729, Benjamin Franklin wrote a pamphlet, A Modest Inquiry into the Nature and the Necessity of Paper Currency. There is no science the study of which is more useful and commendable than the knowledge of the true interest of one's country, and perhaps there is no kind of learning more abstruse and intricate, more difficult to acquire in any degree of perfection than this, and therefore none more generally neglected. Hence it is that we every day find men in conversation contending warmly on some point in politics, which, although it may nearly concern them both, neither of them understand any more than they do each other. Thus much by way of apology for this present inquiry into the nature and necessity of a paper currency, and if anything I shall say may be a means of fixing a subject that is now the chief concern of my countrymen in a clearer light, I shall have the satisfaction of thinking my time and pains well employed. To proceed then, there is a certain proportionate quantity of money requisite to carry on the trade of a country freely and currently, more than which we would be of no advantage in trade, and less, if much less, exceedingly detrimental to it. This leads us to the following general considerations, and there's a link then to the Founders' Archives and Benjamin Franklin's papers from which that quote is taken. And I think the link is in the description, and the blog goes on through a series of blog links to posts about energy, the importance of energy to an economy. The variables in an economy are energy for transforming resources, and then human ingenuity and labour. I spent the winter of 2021 really studying the energy market, and at the end of that period of study I came up with these 7 points. I think the priority variables are: 1. Electricity baseload production, coal and natural gas and LPG products. 2. Crude oil production and refinery capacities. Volumes of production are more important than the price per barrel. 3. Swing production from shale or capped and ready to go existing discoveries. very important to who has upper hand on marginal pricing on swing production. Texas Railroad Commission, OPEC, US shale production, question mark. 4, gas production and coal production are probably equal with 3 or interchangeable with. 5, Venezuelan and Iranian supply disruption through sanctions. You can add in Ukraine, Nord Stream being blown up, etc. to that, is a political bottleneck to an otherwise trivial supply problem in the oil market and the gas market, the hydrocarbons market in general. 6, geopolitical and Green New Deal political economy choices. These gas pipelines are again self-inflicted own goals. Why? And then 7, money velocity and money supply related to energy use growth are being severely impacted by levels of consumer, corporate and sovereign debt. That final point is a bit of a cork sniffy point about because the financial system takes itself as its own referent, you get a lot of circular reasoning as to quantities of money just in terms of quantities of money. What's important are quantities of money or tickets in relation to available resources, including energy and physical resources, whether that be commodities or consumer goods. And it's that's the basis of the social credit movement. It's the basis of Ezra Pound's usurer canto. Now that's usually given as a sign of his madness and his rantings. I read an article that Hitchens wrote in the Atlantic, Christopher Hitchens wrote in the Atlantic several years back, where he alludes to both Pound's alleged anti-Semitism and Pound's ranting and madness around the question of usury. And the question of usury in terms of money changing and variable exchange rates as well as variable interest rates is incredibly important, and it's actually found back in Aristotle. It's found back in Solon's reforms. There's a very long history of both Jubilee and opposing usury rates of interest on dead mediums. Anyway, then it goes on. That's the David Knight thing yesterday, which is worth listening to, talking about new oil refineries being funded by Saudi in China, China increasing both its refining capacity and imports of oil, while new production and refining capacity in the USA has been barred. Now, there's plenty of oil in the US. The US is self-sufficient in oil, and there are also vast untapped fields, Gull Island for instance, in Alaska. And the energy harry-carry, which is how it's described by William Engdahl. He wrote an article which appeared in the press last year, talking about how the EU policies and NATO policies regarding energy just seem to be a constant stream of own goals, and which also seems to have infected the American legislatures as well right now, and it is just crazy. If you're looking to foster and husband prosperity within a national area, of course, and this is the point about the gap, social credit theory, and looking at the purpose of the economy in terms of the financial system and the people who run the financial system. So this is the argument that the financial system we have is the old Babylonian system, the old Venetian system, that then went to Amsterdam, that then transferred to London, then is kind of between London and Wall Street, but seems to be moving house again. Where do I think it's moving house to? A few years back, people were saying Astana in Kazakhstan, where there's a new great big capital city springing up, and the point about controlling the pawns on the chessboard, as opposed to empowering the pawns on the chessboard, as it were, that's really the point that we get to. What is the objective? Are we looking at a bug or are we looking at a feature? And my strong conclusion is now that this is actually a feature of the usury-based financial system, which is best summarised, and this is a quote from Zarlenga's The Lost Science of Money, which is owes a debt to The Science of Money by Alexander Del Maire, and Calvin is quoted as saying the poor must remain poor so that they remain obedient, and Protestantism, Lutheranism, Puritanism, Oliver Cromwell, the Whig junta, the Restoration monarchy, the founding of the Bank of England during the period of William and Mary, are all involved in that process, which actually did culminate in the 18th century mercantile liberalism, the triangular trade, and the Great Hunger in Ireland, where the export of grain was considered more important long enough to let the population starve. That's called the potato famine in popular culture, but that actually hides the true nastiness, the pure evil of that East India Company ideology, which really is the cloth from which modern corporatism, the modern corporate financialized fascism that we face today, it's the same ideology that drives the World Economic Forum, etc., etc. So anyway, this blog in a simple way connects through just some simple statements, and if you click on the numbers by, it will take you to where it is. So there's a quote from Marx, there's a quote from Carol Quigley from Tragedy and Hope, there's a quote from Benjamin Franklin, there's a quote from Martin Shubik, which comes from this paper here. Shubik was the writing partner with the guy that was in the film The Beautiful Mind. So Shubik is the other half of the invention of game theory, and this paper here in the Handbook of Monetary Economy is from 1990, a game theoretic approach to the theory of money and financial institutions. It repays the reading. So that's where that other quote comes from. The other one is from Deuteronomy. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there, and be lucky.